you guys are in for a treat. So through some of my travels, and we talked about that several times this year, and when I met Pete Rogers with the Christian Outdoor Podcast, Pete put me onto some social media stuff, which is Carbon TV. And I started following Carbon TV, and this chef kept popping up in all my feeds. And I started watching what she was doing, and I'm like, man, that looks so good that I want to try it. So I continued to follow her, and I just reached out to her and said, hey, can you give us some cooking lessons on wild game? Because that seems to be her specialty. And she obliged, and we have got Chef Shelly Meyer on from Darby, Montana.
Yeah.
And how is this?
We're spread out a little bit.
Yeah, Southwest Virginia to Montana. Now,
there you go.
You just enlightened me on something that I wasn't aware of. Of course, I'm not a big fan either. But what are you close to, and what's one of the places that you get to hang out? You got to tell us.
Well, absolutely. So I am a private chef. I'm a former restaurateur turned private chef, and I live 1 mile away from the ranch where they filmed the show Yellowstone. And I actually private chef at that ranch for guests because they operate as a guest ranch when they're not filming. So I private chef at that ranch and have been very blessed to have cooked for some very notable people and very fun people. And it's absolutely a blast. I love what I do now. So yeah, I get to kind of experience one of the cabins they call is Rip's Cabin, and that's one of the more popular ones. Like I literally go there, and as a private chef, I'll cook in that cabin. So when you see those episodes, if you do follow the show, you see the characters Rip and Beth, and in his cabin. I've cooked in that kitchen, and yeah, it's dark. It's so dark. It's hard to cook.
Yeah.
But yeah, people rent that. One of the funniest stories I have is, I'm a chef and I'm only focusing on cooking and prepping. And one of the guests came up to me and says, Shelly, where's the train station? And I said, well, it's a long ways away. I mean, and I'm thinking literally the passenger train, like, you got to go all the way up to Whitefish to get on that. Like, no. We're talking about the show. I'm like, oh, okay. I have no idea. I think it's on the border of Idaho and Montana, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to take you to the train, take you out back to the train. Yeah. So, Chef, you've got your own spice line.
I do.
You're on what you told me is kitsch.com, where it's like an interactive cooking show.
Yes. So that show is called Shelly's Montana Table, and I am on kitsch.com / Shelly-Meyer. But I have my wild game things on there, as well as domestic meats as well, fish and so forth. But kitsch.com is, the fun thing about it is it's very interactive. Like I can do a live stream, and you can call in, Heath, and ask me a question about exactly, what I'm doing. If I didn't explain it well enough, you can go, hey, listen, what would you do with this or that? So it's kind of a fun new network that is more interactive on that aspect. So yeah, I'm on kitsch.com. And then the fun thing, so I have 2 seasons of Shelly's Game Kitchen on Carbon TV. However, season 3 will be exclusive. I'm going to be exclusive on Carbon TV for season 3 and the future of Shelly's Game Kitchen.
Oh, nice. And it's all wild game. Is that correct?
Yes. Shelly's Game Kitchen is all about wild game. I also, because as a private chef, a lot of my guests will come here and they want the Montana experience. So I have cooked wild game dinners for, elite clients. And then because of that aspect, I can't use what my husband and I harvest. I have to source it through USDA. And so I actually hooked up with an online source and showcased that on season 2 and several episodes too, of how you can, if you're not from a hunting community, but you still want it, or you don't have the exotic meats like axis deer in your neighborhood and you want to try it, this is a great source to be able to get that. Or wild boar, they're very kind of centrally located in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
The most of them are. So that's kind of where this ranch is based out of is Texas. And get Wild and Pure, they have a fabulous mobile processing unit, USDA inspected. So the harvesting and the field dressing is done properly and clean and on site, even for this USDA inspected process. So it's kind of a cool source.
Nice. So that's going to roll us into our very first thing we want to talk about, because you and I touched on it. You and I have the same belief that your food prep starts with the harvest.
100%. 100%. I believe there's so many people that are afraid to try game, or they've tried a bad one that was gamey. I honestly believe the quality of your food starts in the quality of your harvest and the quality of your field dressing, because the stress on that animal in the field will taint the meat that you're going to cook later. So prepping beforehand as a hunter, really making sure you've done your target practicing and all of those things to have a clean harvest, and then dressing it out. My husband is like a pro, and he does it so fast and so clean. I have seriously served, because everybody knows we're a hunting family, and my freezers is full of wild game. And when house guests come over or friends come over, 9 times out of 10, I am cooking them wild game from our freezer. And I just don't think about it. And I'll serve wild game and not even think about it. And the guests will be, that's the greatest beef I've ever eaten. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So, and after they eat it and they've said that, then I'll say, well, that's because it was elk or it was antelope. I literally just had that conversation with somebody about antelope, and everybody thinks that it's the worst tasting. Like,
sage. I hear that all the time. It tastes like sage. That's what I hear.
Well, and again, it really kind of depends on where you're harvesting, what they eat. It's kind of like whitetail. Oh my God, a corn-fed whitetail is butter compared to, a grass-fed that is not in cornfields. So yes, what they eat matters. And that also comes into the locations of your hunts and so forth. But, I love antelope. It is clean. It is tender. But we get it out of grasslands more than sage. So I really think that that's the difference of where they feed.
Yeah. No, I can definitely see that. Because it depends on what the food source is for the year, does have a different taste to the animal that I've been that I've had to deal with, for sure. So what are some tips, or what are some things that you would acknowledge when we're doing the processing to make the outcome better for us as hunters?
Nice. Our experience and what we do is we will eviscerate and gut in the field, and then we bring it back and hang it. Temperature is always going to be an issue. So where you are, we're in Montana. So, our hunting season is typically cold. So we don't have this much of a problem with that. However, if it's a fall hunt, we always bring the ice and so forth. But we like to at least a week, if not 2 weeks, hide on, eviscerated, we will hang it. And let the enzymes, the natural occurring enzymes, really go to work on that protein. But again, that depends on the quality of the kill. If that was tainted, because they were stressed. It wasn't a one-shot kill or what have you. That will matter. I don't have personal experience with a scenario that was totally tainted because my husband and myself, one of my antlered hunts was an antelope, and it was a one-shot kill. So zero stress. And I think zero stress makes a huge difference in the quality of the meat. And then the clean and fast processes of how you dress it out.
Right.
And then, like I said, we hang it, and that goes back even into the beef world. If you understand, they hang carcasses and let those enzymes work. It's like a dry aging process. So a minimum of a week, if you can keep it, cold and or chilled, if it's below 40 or whatnot, you're fine.
Yeah, I just bought a whole Wagyu beef.
Okay. Wow.
Well, let me tell you, it was 95% Wagyu, 5% Hereford. My dad had run across. He's got a friend that had some, and this one come up. So I was like, I'm gonna try it. But yes, when I went and picked picked it up, took it to the slaughterhouse. I guess that's what you want to call it. They hung it for 2 weeks.
Right.
Like, Miss Taylor's like, hey, it's going to be 3 or 4 weeks out. We're gonna hang it, take care of it, yada yada yada. And literally, she was about exactly right. I think it was 3 weeks later they called and said, hey, we've got your stuff ready.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference, and people think that in wild game aspects, I just had this conversation with somebody, and that they're so anti-antelope because they haven't done the one-shot kill and the stress, because their nickname is speed goat. So when they immediately take off, you're tainting that meat. Those cases, you have to let, in my opinion, you have to let that hang.
Break down.
So, and then, determine through the butchering process, like we do all of our own butchering of all of our wild game.
Uh-huh.
So Brad will butcher, and we even process our own burger. We're set up with grinders, and we make our own sausage and smoke it and all of that. So I've always found that being in control of every step along the way, and not everybody can do that, and I understand, but know the quality of your butcher. And I think that's huge, because every single step from the harvest through to the dressing out in the butchery makes a huge difference in the final product. The taste, the smell, the mouth feel, all of that.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest tip. And I was shocked that other people didn't hang their game. Like I literally was shocked. Like, what do you mean you don't? Yeah, we always do. So I think that's a huge tip.
Yeah, when I was growing up, and my dad still has it. Dad's got a dairy out behind the house, and anytime we would kill a deer, we would let that thing hang 7, 10, 14 days. And then as I've gotten older, of course, I don't live close to there, so it's not an option for me, and I don't have a place to do that. And then for some reason, I want to say through some article, or maybe it was something that I'd seen where they said it wasn't necessary to hang your animals for whatever reason. But we're in Southwest Virginia, so sometimes during season it's a little warmer than I would like it to be. And if the guys down south, they really probably don't have that option because of the temperature. Right. But I can tell you from my own experience that the deer that we used to hang as I was growing up to the stuff that I'm doing now has a different taste.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's nothing different other than the hanging.
The hanging. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the enzymes, the natural enzymes that happen in the meat. It makes a huge difference. The aging process, that's what that is. And I understand there are times and situations where you can't. In those cases, I would at least wet age. So if you have to butcher the whole animal, then get the full primal cuts and wet age the primal cut. So cryovac them, put them in the fridge, wet age them for 14 to 21 days, and then take them out and butcher them into individual steak cuts or what have you. It's a passion that if you're truly passionate about the full process of not just the hunt and the rush of the hunt, but you're truly passionate about what that product, the original organic aspects of that product, does for a lifestyle, invest in having that refrigerator be like a designated refrigerator in the garage that you can wet age your primal cuts. I think it would make a huge difference, especially for y'all in the South.
So explain that process to me again, because I'm not sure that I'm completely clear on the wet aging.
The wet age?
Yes.
Okay. So if you have like your primal cuts, you can debone and have like the full loin, the full backstrap. Okay. So you can have that full backstrap before you cut it into individual portions or whatnot. Cryovac. So, get the sealer where you take
Vacuum
all the air
seal.
out. Vacuum seal. Thank you. That whole primal cut. And in that vacuum seal process, then take that and refrigerate it. It's called wet aging. Dry aging is in a lined room where it's open to the air and so forth. But wet aging also allows the enzymes to break down the proteins and so forth in that meat. The wet aging will do not as great of a job as dry aging, but dry aging, you need fat. And, the qualities of wild game is lean. But in that wet aging process, that cryovac, all of those enzymes are going to work on that protein to tenderize it, to create the flavors that you're wanting. And then break the seal after 21 days, do at least 14 days, but we usually will do 21. And then pat it off and then cut it into portion sizes, however you like to portion size for your freezer. And that's when you would, we don't cryovac when we freeze. We wrap with plastic wrap several times, and then we do freezer paper just to prevent freezer burn, and then freeze those. But yeah, the wet aging process will give you the enzymes that you need if you cannot hang it. That's the next step that you would want to do for the best quality of your eating experience.
All right, before we move on, I want to ask you a question, what you just said. So we vacuum seal about everything we do. So why the choice to plastic paper and then the butcher paper? What is the benefit? Is there a benefit, and what drives that decision?
Yeah, no, it's just expense.
Okay.
If you do like 5 layers of plastic wrap, you're basically getting out all of the air, because that's the biggest thing. You want to prevent air from hitting it. And then the freezer paper just, again, gives a second layer of protection for freezer burn.
Okay.
But it's just expense, because some of those bags can get expensive. And we seriously, we do our summer sausage and stuff like that. We always cryovac that, vacuum seal. But usually on our steaks and burger, we just wrap with several layers, like 5 or 6 layers of the plastic wrap, and then freezer paper.
Got it.
For expense.
Yeah, and you're right, because I buy rolls of that vacuum seal stuff, and it is expensive for sure. Yeah. So all right. So when I'd first contacted you, I kind of thought, let's talk about, some of the stuff that most hunters they deal with. So, I said, hey, I like to trout fish and catfish and striper. I catch, quite a few stripers throughout the summer and trout in the spring. And we'll catch catfish some on the river. And then, most people deer hunt. And we talked about bear and like the guys out west, the antelope and the elk, which I do say, I believe, and I've not had a chance to eat it a lot, but I'm fairly sure that elk is probably my favorite wild game. So, let's just, yeah. I mean, and like I said, I'm putting in for my tags. I want to kill one so bad just so I can have it. I mean, no other reason. And I talked to you too about maybe before we get ahead of ourselves, everything that we take, I'm a big believer in if you harvest or catch, keep, whatever, that we use, it's a purpose. We use it. We don't waste game. And it's just, my great grandparents instilled that on me when I was a kid. And I'll tell you the story that I had went out one day and killed a pile of squirrels, and I let them sit out back, and I didn't do anything with them. And my great granddad, he got all over me, and he was like, "Son, you don't do that. You don't go out just to be killing stuff." And of course, it was more violent than that. But, yeah,
we're downplaying it. Yeah.
So
I get it.
Anyway, that has always stood with me, and to this day, and I have. I mean, I'm guilty. I've made bad shots or done something to destroy the animal that was not obtainable, eatable. Maybe get a back quarter off of it, maybe a tenderloin strip or whatever. But we hunt. Of course, we love to be outdoors, but we hunt to supply us with food.
Right.
And we fish. I love to fish, and if I don't plan on eating it, I don't keep it. It's catch and release. Right. So you and I had talked about that, and I'm a firm believer in waste not, want not. Like, don't do it.
Yeah.
So let's just start with the fish. Let's start with, I spend a lot of time on the trout streams in the spring. That's kind of where my trout fishing and turkey season is, the spring thing here.
Yeah.
So let's tap into those. Let's talk about maybe a little bit about prep, some different ways to cook it. Like I told you, I can grill it, and other than that, I'm not a cook. I don't care. You could give me a recipe and tell me to add a cup of this, a quarter cup of this, 2 teaspoons of that, mix well and put in the oven, and it still wouldn't taste right. I can't do it. I just can't do it.
But, there's one thing as a chef that I can't teach, and that's the chef's palate. So, a lot of these, I talk about this on my show, Shelly's Game Kitchen, too. It's like, I can tell you add a teaspoon of this and a teaspoon of that, but you have to taste it and then be able to determine, how much more. Do I need more salt? Do I need more pepper or what have you? Talking about, we talked a little bit about the kind of fish that you catch, and, it's the trout is here. It's a lot of catch and release too. And the smaller trout, the best thing is, in my opinion, is to smoke them and really, because there's just so many bones, and
Yeah.
it's like, it's kind of a pain. But smoked trout in like a dip or something like that, put a little cream cheese and mayo and mix that up and make like a smoked trout dip. Fabulous. Then with, as a chef, we look at fish based on style. Is it a white flaky fish? Is it, a red fleshed fish like salmon? Because each one has different techniques that are better for those styles, but they're you can transpose them into wild game or whatnot based on the style of meat. Specifically with the fish, the fattier fish, the red fleshed fish are usually your fattier ones. They do great with spicy things. They'll do great with, glazes. Your white flaky fish are more mild. So you want to keep the recipes more on the mild side, unless you do like a smoke. So that's what I love to do with small trout, is smoke them, but a nice pan size trout, and really doing, I think one of the easiest things is, if you hear about scoring the flesh, do like 3 scores on the top and on the bottom, and then do a pan sear. You're just getting a crispier skin, and it's actually helping to cook the fish faster, because you don't want to overcook it. It's such a delicate fish. You don't want to overcook it. So being able to score that and have that be faster is the secret to still having moisture, not totally dried out, but cooked fish. And then it easier to pull those bones away, in those scenarios. But a great oven baking is also great. Those are things that fast and easy. Put it in or on the grill. Do you like wrap it in tin foil with like onions and garlic and lemon slices and stuff, and then put it on the grill?
So yeah, and I want to go back to remind me to ask you about the scoring.
Okay.
But yeah, so if I fix it, it's one of 2 ways, and you mentioned them both. We put it in the pan and sear it and cook it really slow after it gets there, and because like you said, it's thin, you don't want to burn it. My best way for me to cook it is on the grill. I soak it in butter, lemon juice, put a strip of bacon in it, roll it up in tin foil, and put it on the grill for 10 minutes. It's done.
Right.
That's how I can make it eatable if you want to eat it. So that's the way I do it. So yes, go back to the scoring. Explain that because like I said, I am not a cook.
Okay.
Explain that to me. And when you put it in the pan, what are you frying it in?
So when you're scoring, it's just a super sharp paring knife, and you're just scoring the skin. You're not going so deep that you're getting into the meat. You're just trying to score the skin. So very light score on the skin, and just like, depending on the size, if you got a size like this, then it can handle 5 or 6.
So that's like a 2-foot fish. We're working.
If you've got a pan size like this, 3 scores, like maybe an inch apart, is perfect on both sides. And then a high temperature, a high heat oil, like grapeseed oil is my usual go-to, or avocado oil or peanut oil, something that's high heat. You'll have enough oil in that pan to cover the bottom of the pan, but not to be swimming. It's just enough to coat the bottom of the pan. And then the other secret in this technique is super dry. You gotta pat that skin dry, because moisture inhibits browning. So super dry, patted dry, and then quick sear. As soon as it hits that grease or that oil in that pan, in a hot pan, it's going to be immediately cooking. And, that's like a maybe 2 to 3 minute on each side. And then if it's a really thick fish, you might need to finish it in the oven. That's kind of the best way. I put it at 350 in the oven to finish cooking the flake if it's a really fatty or a real fat trout. But usually trouts are thin and skinny. So, that's, if it doesn't seem like it's done enough, you can flip it on the other side just to prevent burning. But I love to do a sear and then finish it in the oven for, 2 or 3 minutes.
The Journey on the Houndsman XP Podcast Network is sponsored by Onyx. The most comprehensive mapping system in the world is available by going to onxmaps.com and downloading their app. Several subscription offers there. Highly recommend you using Onyx. And here's a true story for you. We've all got that spot where when we turn our hound loose at night, they're going to head that direction. Well, the other night, my hounds headed in a direction for that property that had recently sold. I had no idea who owned that property. I simply opened up my Onyx app, found the landowner information, cut the dogs off, and the next day I went to their house. And not only did I get permission to hunt there, I think I made some new friends. They are beef farmers, and they do not like raccoons running through the feed bunks, leaving their mess behind. Yeah. Go to onxmaps.com and download the app today. At checkout, make sure you use the promo code HXP20 and get 20% off. When you join us on Patreon, you will get a discount code for a deeper discount on Onyx Maps. Know where you stand with Onyx.
The Journey on Houndsman XP has teamed up with One TDC. This dual-action support for oral health and mobility in our dogs. This unique supplement is so effective that it is recommended by top veterinarian experts worldwide to maintain and improve our dog's health in 4 different areas. Their oral health, hips, joints, and muscles, skin, coat, energy, and recovery. Guys, I've been using this product for the last 6 months, and it has been a game changer for me. If you're looking for something to help with the overall health of your dog, go to worksowell.com and give this product a try. It is highly recommended by Houndsman XP here on The Journey. What about, let's go catfish, because we talked about that too. A lot of people don't like it because they think that it's nasty.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to the same thing of the quality of the harvest, the quality of the evisceration, and a good catfish is white, flaky fish. It's clean. It's, if you've got a really beautiful river fish and whatnot, it's so good. And I love to do blackened catfish tacos.
I was going to say those tacos.
Favorite. Yes. And it's because catfish, going back to that fattier, it can handle spice. So catfish has just got a little bit more fat to it, and you just need to cook it a little bit longer. But spice needs fat to carry the spice. So it's a beautiful fish to be able to do with blackening spice. And I actually, my spice line is Montana Flavor to Savor. And I have a blackening spice in that line. I've got 7 different ones. I've got a blackening spice and an espresso rub that would be awesome with catfish. And, blackening, I love to do a hot cast iron skillet in that. And again, a high heat oil, sear it until you just want to see the flakes start to, come apart, then you're done. That's the thing is the technique to looking at fish when it's done. To me, fish is the easiest thing to cook, and other people they're so afraid of it because if you overcook it, it's dry. If you undercook it, you're eating slime.
Yeah.
But watching the flakes of that fish kind of start to, open up a little bit.
It's done.
You're good. Yeah, you're done. So, and yeah, blackened catfish. Everybody wants to do a fish fry, and I love a good fish fry. The secret with the good fish fry is you have to season the breading. Even if it's just flour or whatnot, you've got to season that. And I actually did an episode on Shelly's Game Kitchen where what we do as chefs is you don't know how much it's going to be seasoned. It's fine. Yeah, it tastes like raw flour, but season your flour before you do your breading technique, and make sure that it tastes salty enough. Make sure that there's flavor to it, or put your blackening spice with that. Make sure that you can actually taste it in that breading because that's the first thing that hits your palate and makes for a better experience on your eating.
Well, I was going to say,
because if you're going to fry it, a lot of that, the fry technique is actually only frying, you're only getting oil into the top 1/8 inch. It's a sealing technique to where then the interior is basically self-steamed. A lot of people think that frying is greasy and so forth. If you do it right and it's the right temp, it's not that greasy at all, because it's just sealing in all of those beautiful flavors. Well, if you don't have any seasoning on that fish or in that breading, then it's steamed in nothing but water, because fish swim in water. So gotta season your fish. On a thick piece of catfish, I will season both sides with my fish seasoning or an all-purpose type of seasoning. And then I will also do the same seasoning in the breading before I roll it and fry it.
Yeah, I was going to say, we can't talk about fish without talking about deep frying, because that south, you know how it is. Everything gets deep fried down here.
Everything's deep fried. Yeah. And it's so good. Oh, my gosh. But I like tacos, fish tacos, whether they're grilled or deep fried.
Mm-hmm.
So it just kind of, to me, is that's my version of fast food, is tacos.
Yeah. And I mean, the last, I usually deep fry my catfish or my striper. That's the two things. The kids love striper. We make nuggets out of it.
Nice.
And now that you're saying that, the last time I cooked it here about a month ago, it was very bland, and we did not season the batter.
There you go.
So that I can see that was the issue.
Yeah, I think that's, if there's one takeaway from all my shows or today, Heath, is season every layer as you go.
Yeah.
So season your raw or whatnot, because then you're developing flavors in those layers, and you don't need as much at the end. If you don't season it along the way, you need way more salt at the end. If you're seasoning it along the way, you're experiencing the flavors as they're meant to be developed, which is as they cook.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Now let's move on to the turkey, because that's something, a lot of people don't like wild turkey. And I will say that I have been guilty of, I don't like turkey legs, and especially a wild turkey.
Wild turkey, right? Yep.
But I did what you just said, is we started smoking them and using them in salads and in stuff like that. And it's made a huge, huge difference in.
Nice.
So let me tell you how you can eat turkey if I fix it.
Okay.
So, because this is the only way. But what I'd like to do is I'll cut the breasts out. I vacuum seal them, put them up, and then whenever we're ready to eat them, I'll take it out, thaw it, and I'll cut it into strips, like chicken strips. And I soak it in buttermilk.
Okay.
And then we have a meal that's close to us that does seasoned flour, and I roll it in seasoned flour, and then we fry it in the pan. And you would not. I take it to work, and people can't. They'll eat it before it's. If you turn your head, it's gone, because they're just smashing it down. So that's the way that I generally eat wild turkey. So help us out.
So going back to what you're saying about the legs, it's the working muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's doing the majority of everything on that bird. And that's why a lot of people don't like them. Your perfect idea to smoke a turkey breast, or turkey legs. I like the buttermilk brine aspect because there's acid in buttermilk, and it's the acid that actually helps to kind of break down those toughness. You can do like an acidic brine of some sort that's not buttermilk, but those ones you kind of have to worry about how long you leave it, because acid will kind of make that meat mealy. But buttermilk has the right balance of fat with the milk and then the acid combined. So it's a beautiful and perfect, like I soak my hearts in and livers and so forth in buttermilk before I cook them. So I love the buttermilk brine. You could also do, we've done whole wild turkey, just like you do a domestic turkey, but the secret is brining it. So getting a big enough, because, turkey, wild turkeys are big. You need a big enough vat to create like a brine, and brines are just super simple. The biggest thing is you have to have like 5 tablespoons of kosher salt to a quart of water, and get that to where it's all melted. And I like to do sugar, more salt than sugar. But the sugar is the biggest thing the salt is the biggest thing, because salt actually creates that enzyme aspect to break down the toughness of the turkey, and also add moisture and so forth. And again, going back to what that turkey ate. So where you harvest it also matters, because, around here in Montana, a lot of the turkeys are following the elk and they're just eating elk droppings. Those don't taste so good. So you really, where everything is harvested matters. It's not the bird as a species, it's what they're eating. So, if you get them where it's a lot of sagebrushy, you have more of a sage. However, a brine will really help that, because any type of fowl or poultry loves sage, like to do rub sage. However, some people as humans don't like sage. So, that's where you get people, I don't really like wild turkey, but other people do. I think those aspects come into play. But doing a full-on brine and then roasting it, that's what I'm going to do for Thanksgiving this year. Is my husband just got a wild turkey, and we've got it completely plucked and in the freezer, and that's what I want to do for Thanksgiving this year. Have a big family and so forth, and friends giving and stuff like that. So that's my opinion on wild turkey.
So just run through this brine real quick, because you said salt, sugar, and water. Mm-hmm. So is that it, or are you adding something else to it?
I do, like, one of my I love on game, like my pheasants and grouse and so forth. I love cardamom pods. So what I do in my brine is actually peppercorns. It's the salt and brown sugar. I love that one. And peppercorns, bay leaves, fresh thyme sprigs. And then I do cardamom pods. So cardamom just adds that little sweetness aspect that I love with my wild game. That's my game brine. And I've got a ratio. That the thing with brining that's so fun is, I know I'm going to get off topic here just a little bit, but when I brine pheasant breasts, or if you've got that your wild turkey breast or the wild turkey legs, brining is 1 hour per pound, but it's pound of the piece. So if you weigh that turkey breast, and that turkey breast is 2 pounds, you need 2 hours in that brine and so forth. So, but if you're doing the whole turkey, then you got to weigh that whole turkey. And that's, if it's 30-pound turkey, I got to brine it for 30 hours to get all of that in there. So,
gotcha.
But that's when you piecing it out, like you have a brine is awesome. I would actually even suggest on your turkey legs, brining them before you smoke them, because what you can impart, the salt draws into the full protein. So the salt in the brine helps all of those flavors draw into the full protein. So like if you like spice, like we were talking about blackening earlier, you can add some peppercorns, you can add some red pepper flake. Szechuan peppercorns would be awesome in a brine if you want a little kick to pull into that full protein. Because then when you're biting through it, you get flavor through the entire bite, not just on the outside. So, if you're frying something or just seasoning the outside and that turkey breast is this thick, you're only getting flavor on the outside, not in the middle.
And my problem with turkey, and I don't care if it's store-bought or wild, it ends up being dry. That's the worst thing for me is I can't cook it worth a crap because it ends up being dry. But now I'm kind of thinking, well, maybe I'm not letting that set long enough for sure. I know that's something I'm not doing.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and the science behind brining is the same amount of moisture leaves that protein when you cook it, whether it's brined or not. So brining adds moisture into that protein, and the same amount of liquid will leave it whether you brined it or not. So that's if you're adding moisture in, that's how you prevent dry turkeys.
I've wrote notes down, so I'm going to work on that.
Perfect. I can't wait to hear how it goes.
So let's move on up the chart a little bit. Let's get into some maybe some deer and bear. And I know we talked about bear, and something you said earlier really has me contemplating the harvest of a bear, because we run hounds, right? So they're chased.
Yeah.
What I have seen through my experience with that, and I'm going on almost 30 years of it, and I don't harvest a lot of bear. I don't care to, but we harvested, one of the girls killed one this year, and I ended up killing one this year. So we have a freezer full of bear meat, and we have rendered all the fat we could get off of it.
Oh, nice.
And
nice.
we're cooking with it constantly. But what I have seen is that the older, more mature boars are more rank, taste wise, and again, I'm taking into consideration what you said about the chase. It seems like your smaller juvenile boars, 150 to 250, do not taste as strong.
Right.
In the sows, which I don't have a lot of experience with that because we try to avoid that at all cost. So I can't really say because I don't know that I have eaten a harvest a sow, so I don't know. But a lot of guys are telling me that they're cooking bear through sous vide.
Oh, nice.
That's how I've talked to several people now that's saying that's how they're doing it. For me personally, we use the hamburger in about everything. Of course, we mix it with beef fat when we have it processed. I like the roasts and the summer sausage. I'm not a huge fan of the steaks, and that's what, if I'm getting it processed, it's going to be hamburger, roasts, and summer sausage. That's basically what I do with what we take. So what's your take on that?
I don't have the best experience with bear either. Like firsthand experience. As a kid, we had bear. My dad got bear and so forth. So now my husband has not been fortunate enough to actually harvest a bear. So as an adult, I don't have experience with bear, but I can tell you from an animal species, it's the closest to pig. And because it's the closest to pig, you really want to look at it from those aspects. And even in the domestic pig world, the old pigs are not the tastiest because it's going to get randier. And even in big game like elk, the old huge elk are, tough and chewy. They're not as good as the younger. So I love the fact, if you've been cooking with the bear fat though, like you rendered down that and you've been cooking with that and it tastes good, then that's a good sign that the rest of the animal is going to taste good as well. But yeah, no, I don't think that I would do any of the steaks as well on a boar. I guess I would suggest on what I do with pork, and that's what, when we were talking earlier, is, I can talk about how you would cook pork and so forth. The fattier meat, and bear is one of the fattiest ones in wild game, the more spice. So you can really get away with adding a lot more of heat in spice and so forth. The burger and cutting it with beef, that also helps to mild out the bear
taste
qualities. And it is in the game world, it is one of the more gamey, randier type of games. And I, as a kid, I know we just used burger, and I think we did a couple of roasts, but my mom wasn't the best cook. Sorry, Mom. And when she did roasts, they were completely
tough,
decimated.
Yeah.
Like, it was the old time cooking of everything has to be completely decimated. But definitely with bear, you want to make sure you have it to that medium well. A slight bit of pink is fine, but that's the same thing with quality pork. A slight bit of pink is fine. Medium well, but because you have to cook it more, you're definitely going to get more into that tougher or gamier aspects. And I think that's just inherent to bear, unless you get a really young one. But like I said, if you're cooking with flavorful rendered bear fat now, I think that's a great sign that it's going to be a nice tasting one. But yeah, I think what you're doing is probably the best. Burger, and then the roast, you can brine red meat too. So a brine on a bear roast would be really good. But I would, like I said, it can get away with a little bit more spice. So I would maybe add a little Szechuan peppercorn to my brine and so forth. So, doing one and determining how you like that flavor, definitely do the brown sugar. And even on the bear, I would probably add equal brown sugar and salt. Well, on the game, or excuse me, on the upland and the turkey, you want less sugar than salt. But on the bear, I would do equal portions of kosher salt and brown sugar, because I think that would really help the flavoring aspects, the sweeter with the fat of the bear. I think it would really be tasty.
Nice. And something you said there, I want to hit on real quick, is, the bear has to be cooked at a little higher temperature. And I'm not 100% sure, but I've heard several people say that your deer's 165, your bear needs to be about 185 internal. Does that sound right, or does that sound wrong, or wrong? Okay. Yeah. Well, that's why we're here to learn.
So, and perfect. Yeah. So when I cook my deer, I cook it to venison, medium rare, and even red meat birds. I do medium rare. Sandhill crane, it's a red meat bird. Migratory birds are red meat birds. You can cook those to medium rare, and it's going to be the best flavor. And medium rare is 130 to 135 max. And then what I would do on bear is what you do on pork, which is 155.
Okay.
Now, I know there's a lot of people can Google and they'll come up with these random numbers, but definitely USDA and health inspectors are going to tell you 20 degrees more than what you need, because even chicken is 160 to 165. So there's no way you would ever want to cook venison to chicken standards. And I would say bear, yeah, once you reach 155, you've killed all the bacteria in the game. If you are worried about it, 165 is, even 160 is what they say on domestic chicken. And then you let it rest and it'll come up to the 165 and whatnot. But I would not cook my bear more than what even domestic chicken needs, because you've completely killed bacteria long before that point. So I think that's overkill. I totally think that those temps are overkill. So it's a good question. And it's also one of those things that I love explaining on, red meat birds and migratory birds. Everybody looks at them like fowl, or like poultry, excuse me. They look at them like domestic poultry, and they're completely decimating it. And then they're like powder. And of course they're not going to like it. That's not the way to experience the best qualities.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I definitely get my bear meat a little. I'm a medium rare, and it's usually a
get your bear a little bit more, because it's pork, so you definitely have that. I can't remember what is it brucellosis, or am I thinking that's buffalo? So I can't remember what the actual disease that bear.
I want to say trichinosis.
There it is. Yeah, trichinosis. So yeah, you just want to be able to kill that. But get it to a well done is 160, 155, 160 max. You've killed the trick. So
yeah. Well, let's wrap this up with two things. I want to talk about deer a little bit, because we've kind of hit on it. We haven't really got into it. And then I'm going to let you finish up with whatever your favorite is.
Okay.
So let's knock out the deer. Deer, I mean, we do the same thing. And I guess I'm assuming everybody does the same. I mean, we use every bit of it we can use. I mean, the tenderloin's obviously my favorite cut. Roasts, hamburger, steaks. We eat a lot of deer steaks. And everything else is, and then we make summer sausage out of anything that we don't have left. And of course we do the high temp cheese and the jalapenos in it and smoke. I love it. I love it. So that's kind of what we do with deer. Okay.
Well, and so what we do with deer is exactly the same thing. We don't do as much burger. Elk burger is far superior, and we do 100%. We don't cut it with anything. It's 100% elk burger. But deer, the steaks, the tenderloins, backstrap, all of those things are, and roasts. We do that. I also will do shanks. And I will have, I'll have Brad harvest just bones. Like, he'll cut me up leg bones and so forth, and I'll make stock. So I'll have wild game stock, venison stock, elk stock, fowl, or upland, like pheasant. I do pheasant stock and stuff like that. Trying to use everything. And then antelope, the shanks, and we'll keep them whole. We don't do them a lot of times in the store or whatnot at the butcher, you'll have ossobuco, which is, they'll portion them out into 2-inch chunks. I'll do a full shank. So I'll get 4, do nice full shank, and I'll do a red wine braise antelope shank, elk shank when I've got a big dinner party coming up. But I love having pure elk stock, venison stock, pheasant stock, or just game stock. Every time I'm prepping, I will keep like the carrots and the onions that you always have trim. We call it trim. A lot of people just throw it away, but there's so much that you can use there. And I'll put it in a gallon size freezer bag and save my trim of onions, carrots, celery, leek, the herb stems, anything like that, and mushroom stems. I'll put that in that freezer bag. And once I've got a couple of bags, then I'll thaw out some bones out of the freezer, elk bones, or I've got 2 pheasant carcasses I'm going to be doing here shortly. So I'll thaw out the pheasant carcass. I'll literally make stock, and it's so delicious, so tasty. And again, utilizing every aspect that you can from that harvested animal. So we talked about you rendering the bear fat. That bear grease is amazing for lard and make cooking biscuits. You can, like, I've made duck fat biscuits and so forth. I haven't made bear biscuits, but I absolutely would. I love the aspect, and even I did one of my episodes was with liver pate, and that's another thing. Because it's wild game, people have a tendency to think, oh, it's going to be gamey. If you don't do it right, and if you overcook it. And going back to the sous vide, so you talked about sous videing the bear and so forth. The sous vide technique is keeping the temperature at the same temperature so you never overcook it. And you get it to the perfect temp, and especially with bear. So, if you're going to go up to 185, you're going to have kind of a tough tasting.
Yeah.
But so that's the beauty of sous vide technique, is it cooks it to that temp and then holds it at that temp. And I love to do, like on my episode of Shelly's Game Kitchen on Carbon TV, I did nilgai liver pate, and I do it in a sous vide. So I'll buttermilk soak it and draw out some of that, inherent blood that's going to be there, super cleaned, and then buttermilk soak it whole. And then I'll sliver it and put it, when I say saute, I'm not meaning getting color. I'm literally putting it for like 1 minute. Like when I thin slice the liver, I'll put it in I'll put it in a pan, 1 minute on one side, and then flip it 1 minute on the other side. And I'm just, again, getting the temperatures to that level and helping to draw out some more of that blood. And then it goes into a sous vide bag with sauteed shallots and garlic and so forth. And the sous vide prevents it from getting overcooked. It comes out beautiful, delicious, fabulous. I absolutely love it. Again, it's not like chicken liver pate. It's not, it has its own flavor, but it's a good flavor. Clean. Again, it was harvested on an animal that was clean killed. And same thing with the heart. Those were the things that I really challenged myself. So like when I was saying before, I had a restaurant for 10 years, a steakhouse. And my husband and I, he worked it with me for 2 years. And then after 2 years, he left and I ran it. After I closed the restaurant after 10 years, I actually went through culinary school and started private chefing and graduated at 50 at the top of my class. But these are the things that I wanted, was those basic techniques that really I could challenge myself. And I really wanted to challenge myself with wild game, because we all can grill a steak. We can all, make a burger with wild game, but let's learn how to actually honor the full animal to the best of our ability. So that's when I started making the shanks and doing the liver and the heart and so forth. And heart is just beautiful. Oh my gosh, it's such a clean, beautiful protein. It's a full-on protein. So so much goodness in the heart.
How do you cook it?
I will slice it into probably 1 inch thick steaks. And then I'll clean out the ventricles and so forth. And then I'll just season flour and dust it in like a seasoned flour and then pan sear it. And it's, again, it's a medium rare because this is wild game. And heart is it's just like a muscle. It is.
All it is a muscle. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So you just cook it to medium rare, pan seared, and then, serve it with a sauce. Like I've done a blackstrap molasses balsamic reduction that is awesome with my heart.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to the deer real quick because I wanted to ask you this, but I didn't want to interrupt. So deer in most game, and you alluded to it earlier, most game is leaner.
Right.
And when we go to cook this stuff, and I feel like we have learned through overcooking too much, but I want to just use the burgers for an example because that's where we had the most trouble, is if it's not mixed with something that has fat, then when I go to cook that burger, give me some tips where I'm not overdoing it, because that seemed to be one of my faults is with, and I'm just using the burger because that seemed to be what it was the most of.
Right. So the biggest thing, yes, any type of venison is super lean. Like in the beef world, 17 grams of fat per 3 ounce portion. In most of the venison worlds, it's 0.9 grams of fat per 3 ounce. So super lean. And if you don't cut it, like, even on the elk, like I said before, we don't cut it with beef, but a lot of people will add like either pork fat or they'll add beef fat because the fat helps as a binder to keep the meat together, but also to add moisture. Because if you do overcook it, it gets super dry. But on venison burger, it'll fall apart. Like if you're grilling, it's going to be falling through your grates.
Yep. Yes.
One of the things that you can do is like our grill, if you want to, two different schools of thought. So in the pan searing process, I love butter. And a lot of times people mess with it too much. It's a set it and forget it. Because if you put it down and then you're constantly trying to, mess with it, I have a saying, and it's food talks to you. If it's not coming up, it has not had that Maillard caramelization happen yet. So super hot is what helps to sear, and the searing aspect helps to keep it together. But like we do our 100% elk burgers on the grill, and it's literally high heat, set it and forget it until, like one of the tricks that we always did even at the steakhouses, if you start to see blood coming out the top before you flipped it, that's kind of like where you're getting into that medium stage. So depending on how you like your burger, I like a little medium rare to medium on my burgers. You definitely don't want to get more when it's game. And the secret is super hot, set it and forget it until it's releasing easily. So you might have to have a scenario depending on where your flames on your grill is, how close it is. You might not want to have it like right there because you need to have some time for that Maillard. And Maillard is just that browning. That's what it's called when it browns and caramelizes on your protein and on your grill marks. So I would say having it overheat, but more so preheat that grill, have it clean before you put that game on it. And then in the pan, again, I love to do butter in a pan and sear it, set it and forget it. Do not touch it. Don't wiggle the pan. Don't try and move it around because that breaks it apart before it's had the chance to caramelize on the bottom. And then if you still are having problems, one of the great things that you can do with game is if it's 100% pure and you haven't cut it with beef, add an egg. Like it's kind of like, you're making meatloaf, but you're not. Just whip up an egg and add that to your ground burger and season. Here's a secret: season the burger before you make your patties. Like I like to lay out your burger meat. Like say you've got a family of 4 or 5 or whatever. So you've got 2 pounds of burger, kind of flatten it out a little bit and do a good layer of seasoning and then mix it together before you form your patty. And you've got flavor again throughout instead of just on the top.
Got it. All right. Yeah, I can do that. I can. Now, are you flipping the burger or are you leaving it?
Am I what?
Are you flipping it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll flip it, but you need at least, that was that Appalachian accent. I did.
Yeah.
I flip it, but it'll be at least 2 to 3 minutes before you get that Maillard and then flip it and do the same thing on the other side. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well, I love it. I'm like, food is my weakness. Like I love to eat. My great grandparents, my mom, like food is, I love food. I could eat all the time, which is probably, I need to cut back on a little bit, but anyway,
it's the great equalizer. And, when you cook for somebody else, you're showing love and care. And when you do that with something that you harvested, that level of care that you're giving to your family is just super special. And like I said before, this is the original organic. You can't get more pure than wild game. And it's another reason why I love it. But it's also, it just takes techniques. And if you think about lean protein techniques, you've got it down.
That's right.
Get creative.
Well, I can't thank you enough. I'm honored to have you on here. You've already given me some tips that I'm going to work on. So if guys and girls that are listening, if they want to look you up, where do they go to look you up? I know you're on Carbon TV. How do they look you up?
Thank you. And this has been such a pleasure and honor. And I'm so glad to do this with you. My social media is Chef Shelly Meyer. And that's Facebook and Instagram. I am Shelly's Game Kitchen on Carbon TV, which is a completely free app. If you're not familiar with Carbon TV, you need to get familiar. It is so cool. There's so many, like 250 plus shows on there and it's all outdoor content. So it's our type of people and our type of shows. And I'm just one of them, lucky enough to be on there. I've got 2 seasons on there. So I think probably 24 episodes up, and then I'm getting ready to start filming season 3. But you can download Carbon TV onto any smart TV or device and watch it for free. Just like you download Netflix, you can download Carbon, but it's free. And then I also am on kitsch.com, and I will be doing new episodes and streaming live on Kitsch once a month, and then also putting up other content, usually on Thursdays. So you can catch me at kitsch.com/Shelly-Meyer, and Carbon TV is carbontv.com/shows/Shelly's-game-kitchen. And then social media, like I said, Chef Shelly Meyer. Follow me on Instagram, and I share recipes and so forth. And that's the other thing. I am working on a cookbook, so I would love to hear back from the viewers. I'm thinking about doing a cookbook, and I was going to do not just wild game, but also just kind of my favorites from my restaurant days and before we had the restaurant, we catered and stuff like that. So kind of some of those, if you got a big party, recipes of, we do pig, we'll roast a pig and have the whole neighborhood and friends come over. So a lot of the questions I get is, how do you figure out portions so you don't have waste? So I can share some of those secrets, but I'd love to know if people would like a just wild game cookbook, or if they'd like a little bit of everything. Mostly because, like I told when I was interviewing for my Kits channel, Shelly's Montana Table, I said, I'm a lot wild and a little bit tame. So a cookbook that's more on that inspired is what I'm thinking, but I'd love to hear feedback.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time out of your day to help us with us after the harvest and things we can do with the wild game. I think it's very important. Like I said, it's instilled in us and our family that if you harvest an animal, that you're harvesting to provide for the family. So I think our views are so in line, and like I said, that's I think we should be preaching that to everybody, honestly. So I appreciate your time.
Great.
I appreciate you coming on and helping us, and this has been a pleasure to do this.
It's been my pleasure.
So
fun to talk with you, Heath. Thank you for having me.
yes, so thank you for helping us teach, train, and learn, Chef Shelly.
Perfect. Thank you.